Events in life, or even just life itself, can trigger anxiety, but for most people, there's actually physiological malfunctions or imbalances going on that are magnifying the way that you experience these events. So the event may have just been like a 2 or a 3, but you can experience it like it's a 9 or a 10 major catastrophe. So this anxiety and panic attack issue can really be confusing because none of the explanations make sense for you. And the reason that is because there's actually more than one underlying cause for anxiety and panic attacks. So what could help one person improve their anxiety could actually make another person much worse, depending on the actual cause of their anxiety. So in this video, I'm going to explain the 4 most common underlying causes for anxiety and steps that you can take today to start figuring out which of these causes is causing your issues. Your anxiety starts to make sense starting right now.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So let us know in the comments section when your anxiety seems to be the highest. We'd love to hear about that. But let's jump right into the first underlying cause for anxiety, and that's oxygen utilization issues due to an overly alkaline bloodstream. So what happens is the blood actually has a pH range that's pretty narrow that it has to stay within or we kind of die. So it's kind of an important factor in the body, and it does what it can to keep that in line. But there's a lot of factors that can push that blood a little bit too far on the alkaline side. And if it pushes too alkaline, what's called the Bohr effect will kick in. And we all learned about the Bohr effect in the 8th grade, but then we kind of never talked about it again. And what it says is when the blood leans a little bit too alkaline, it holds oxygen in the blood, and then the oxygen can't leave the blood and go down to the tissues where it needs to be. So this is a kind of big deal. You know the body needs oxygen to survive. If somebody cut off your oxygen, you would kind of go into a panic. So the body can do this too. The body doesn't have oxygen where it needs to be so it can be utilized. And your doctor will put a pulse oximeter on your finger and be like, oh man, that's a great score. You got great oxygen, way to go. The trouble is the oxygen can't leave your blood and get down to the tissues where it needs to be. So it can send the body into a bit of a panic. This is why when someone's having a panic attack, you always see on like a TV show, they'll take a paper bag and they'll breathe into that paper bag and they'll come out of that panic attack. What's happening is they're exhaling CO2, which is carbon dioxide, which is acidic. And then when they breathe that back in the paper bag, they're bringing more CO2 into the system, which helps acidify that blood and helps some of the oxygen then get down to the tissues where it needs to be. We don't really recommend this as a solution for anxiety or panic attacks because if someone's blood is leaning too far on the acidic side, that could make it worse, or maybe they're dealing with hypoxemia, which is not enough oxygen in the bloodstream. That could really put them into a really bad place by just breathing into a paper bag. But if you were to take steps ahead of time, like right now, you can check your breath rate, and that can give us an indication of if the blood is leaning a little bit too far on that alkaline side. So you can just set a timer for 60 seconds and then just count the times that you inhale in that 60-second period. Don't count inhale as 1 and exhale as 2, just count the inhales. And if it's lower than 12 inhales per minute, that's a sign that your blood may be leaning a little bit too far on that alkaline side. And then all of a sudden, this anxiety may start to make a little bit of sense for you. You can also hear about people using like a regular Coke to fix their panic attack, and that's because that regular Coke recipe has things that are kind of acidic in it. It also has CO2, which is acidic, so that comes into the system. It helps push that blood less alkaline, and then the body can use that oxygen like it needs to. But again, we don't recommend this. Sodas can magnify a lot of other underlying causes of anxiety that we're going to get to in just a minute. So again, that's not the solution, but it helps us understand that when the blood leans a little bit too alkaline, it can really magnify these issues for a lot of people. If you want to learn more, in the description below this video, we'll put some links to some articles and some studies talking about the relationship between the pH of the blood and anxiety levels. Now, the second underlying cause for anxiety that's really common is low mineral and nutrient levels. Now, this can be a really big deal, and you can kind of get some insights into whether your mineral levels might be too low by just looking at your blood pressure. So at least 2 hours after a meal, you can just So relax and take your blood pressure, and if that systolic number, which is the top number, is lower than 112, that's a really strong sign that mineral levels are too low in the body. And this is really common to see. It's usually caused by an inability to really digest your food correctly and pull all the minerals out of that food, but there's other issues that can create this as well. But minerals are needed in the system for signals to travel from the brain to the body and from the body back to the brain. And when there's not enough minerals in the system, those signals can get dropped and the body can feel a little bit anxious about that. And we tend to experience what our body is experiencing. This is why a lot of antidepressant and anti-anxiety medications work. They work by restricting a person's ability to pee out their salts. So then more minerals stay in the system and they can function a little bit better. So a person, if they're on anti-anxiety medications, they might look at their blood pressure and it'll be in a great range. I'm like, well, that's not the problem. But the reality is that the medication is kind of making their blood pressure a little bit misleading by showing that there's more minerals in the system that are really coming in from the food that you're eating. So if a person's on these medications, they just need to understand how they can cause that blood pressure to be a little bit misleading. I'm not saying to stop taking those medications. I'm just saying to understand how they can affect the body so you know what you're looking at. So beyond minerals, when we're breaking down our food, we're also accessing things like vitamins and amino acids and glucose and fats and all these things that the body needs to carry out the functions that it wants to carry out so the body can operate the way that it wants to operate. So when we're not bringing these nutrients in, it's more than just minerals going low. Other nutrients can go low that can send the body into a bit of a panic. It's a stressful situation for the body to try to carry out all these functions that it doesn't have enough resources to carry out. It would be like you trying to pay $800 worth of bills with 12 bucks. That's a stressful situation. So when our body is stressed, we can experience that stress. And when we feel this anxious feeling, we look in our life for things that must be creating this anxiety. And most of us have things in our life that could really create anxiety. So it's easy to find things and to blame those things. When the reality is, the anxiety is coming from inside our body. It's coming from malfunctions in the body that are creating this anxiety and magnifying the situations that we're viewing in our life. This can be magnified because when the body feels stressed like this, it will raise stress hormones that will try to help the system run better with less resources. And these stress hormones can push us into a sympathetic fight or flight state that can literally change the way our body is operating so that the body can operate at a higher level to deal with what it's viewing as an emergency. And meanwhile, in your life, you're looking at, why do I feel like there's an emergency going on? And you look to find reasons in your life that there might be an emergency. Maybe there's not anything, but you're still feeling anxious because the body is feeling anxious and dealing with issues that it views as an emergency. Now, another issue that can magnify this is if a person is having hypoglycemic type reactions to eating carbohydrates. If they're creating spikes and major crashes in blood sugar, it's in that crash in blood sugar that can really create an emergency for the body. So we'll put a link in the description below to better understand the reaction of hypoglycemic type issues if you're dealing with problems like that as well. But this is also why stress in your life can magnify anxiety for a lot of people, and why pretty much the only advice out there is, hey, why don't you learn how to calm down? And hey, why don't you just simmer down a little bit? And the reality is that if someone does have a lot of stress in their life and they find a way to reduce that stress, it can reduce their anxiety. So they kind of view it like, oh, this is the answer for everybody. But for people where the stress is coming from inside their body, well, that's not going to do a whole lot of help, now is it? Underlying cause number 3 is lactic acidosis, or high levels of lactic acid. Now, there's a lot of information out there about how high levels of lactic acid can raise anxiety or cause panic attacks. Like, they know that you can induce a panic attack by injecting lactic acid into a person. What they don't understand is why so many people have such high levels of lactic acid. They're not working out all the time. Why is this happening? So Dr. Emmanuel Revisi helped us understand that the body has a natural circadian rhythm at the cellular level. During the day, the body should be in a more catabolic state where the body is very good at making energy and kind of keeping us going all day. And then at night, we should move into an anabolic state where the body is very good at resting and repairing. The problem is, some people can get stuck in one of these states most of the time, and they're not moving back and forth between day and night like they should. And when they get stuck in one of these states, it can create a lot of problems. So here's where this brings us to anxiety. The problem is that a byproduct of creating energy through fermentation is lactic acid. So if a person is stuck in this anabolic state all the time, they're not moving out of that state, and that's how they're creating their energy, and they're creating all of this lactic acid in the system. So lactic acid can accumulate faster than the system can get rid of it. And now they have all this lactic acid in the system, and it's creating anxiety and panic attacks for them. This is why you hear about magnesium helping a lot of people with anxiety issues. Magnesium is one of the most pro-catabolic minerals, so it can help push a person out of that anabolic state so they're not making lactic acid all day long every day. Also, when they're taking magnesium, they're also lifting their minerals, which could help those people that were having issues due to minerals being too low. So magnesium really has the ability to help some people with anxiety, but it can magnify other problems for others. So that's why it can be so beneficial to look at where your physiology is and understand what your body chemistry is telling you. So underlying cause number 4 is an overly sympathetic fight or flight state, kind of like we talked about before. People can get stuck in this state as well, whether they're having stress in their life that's pushing them into this state or stress in their body. But when you have that blood pressure cuff that we talked about before, you can look at your blood pressure and you can look at what's called your pulse pressure. And you find your pulse pressure by subtracting your diastolic number, which is that bottom number, from the top systolic number. And the result is what we call a pulse pressure. So a blood pressure of 120/80 would give us a pulse pressure of 40. That's a great pulse pressure. But if you see that pulse pressure going greater than 46, that's a strong sign that you may be stuck in that sympathetic fight or flight state. So this is usually going to happen when someone's having stress in their life or stress in their body, maybe a lack of resources, or maybe they have some type of invader or infection or some type of overgrowth that's stressing the body out. But when you can correct these issues and allow the body to calm down, all of a sudden it becomes a whole lot easier for you to calm down too. Now remember that fixing any of these underlying causes, and a person may be dealing with more than one at the same time, but correcting these underlying causes doesn't remove all the anxiety-inducing things in your life. That's life. They're going to be there. But it can help you take those from a 9 or a 10 down to a 2 or a 3, and then you can manage them a little bit easier. So with these simple tests that we've talked about today, you can look at your body chemistry and figure out what's the most likely underlying cause for your anxiety. If you want to learn more about looking at your own body chemistry, my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, teaches you simple tests that you can run at home using tools you can pick up at a pharmacy or a health food store. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'm going to put a link in the description below this video so you can get the whole thing totally for free. And if you don't like to read, we also have a totally free digestion course that'll walk you through those same steps, and I'll put the link to that course below. So now that you know how to look at your body chemistry to figure out the actual underlying cause of your anxiety so it can actually make sense to you, go ahead and jump over to our video on how to fix anxiety so you can understand the steps to how to correct these imbalances that could be causing that anxiety for you. I can't wait to hear about your results.